Good morning, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your 15 minutes academic break, as we are used to do here in Italy, and we have the pleasure to start. It is a great pleasure to welcome you today to our side event, Bridging Generations for Sustainable Peace, Advancing the Intersection of Women, Peace and Security and Youth Peace and Security. My name is Marius Cevelli, and I'm co-president of Sustainable Cooperation for Peace and Security. And on behalf of SCPS, I would like to sincerely thank you for joining us this morning. First of all, I would like to express our gratitude to the governments of Italy and to the government of the Philippines for their leadership as co-chairs of the Women, Peace and Security Focal Point Network and for convening this important gathering in Rome. I would also like to thank our partners, the Women, Peace and Security Network Canada, that are represented by Dr. Caterina Leclerc online, and UN Women Italy, that are represented here today by her president, Daria Magidi, and the board member on behalf of the Youth Network, Diletta Pasqualotto, as well as the organizers, speakers, and all participants who have made this event possible. For us, SCPS, today is particularly meaningful. This year marks the 5th anniversary of our organization. Over the past 5 years, we have worked to promote dialogue, peace building, and meaningful participation at local, national, and international levels. We began 5 years ago. A small youth-led initiative has grown into an organization contributing to national, European, and global conversations on peace building, dialogue, and inclusive security. It is therefore a special privilege for us to contribute to this important discussion at the moment when Italy is also preparing to launch its first national action plan on youth, peace, and security. The adoption of Italy's first national action plan on youth, peace, and security represents an important milestone, not only for young people, but for the broader peace and security community. It reflects the growing recognition that sustainable peace requires inclusive approaches, and then young people must be recognized not only as beneficiaries of peace and security policies, but also as partners and contributors in shaping them. The idea for today's discussion emerged during the CSO UN Dialogue held in Geneva in December 2025. Together with my Canadian colleague, Caterina Leclerc, we reflected on how discussions on women, peace, security, and youth, peace, and security are often conducted in parallel, despite the many connections between them. We asked ourselves a simple question: what more could we achieve if we intentionally brought these two agendas together? This question is at the heart of today's event. Over the past decade, the Youth, Peace and Security Agenda has demonstrated that young people are not merely beneficiaries of peace-building efforts, but essential partners in preventing conflict, building social cohesion, and sustaining peace. Similarly, for the 25 years, the Women, Peace and Security Agenda has shown that meaningful participation of women is not simply a matter of representation, but a prerequisite for more inclusive and durable peace. Yet, too often, the agendas continue to operate in separate spaces. Today, we have an opportunity to explore how they can reinforce one another. In particular, we have an opportunity to reflect on the experiences, leadership, and contributions of young women who stand at the intersection of both agendas and whose voices are essential for building more inclusive peace processes. This discussion is also linked to the work of the United Nations on youth, peace, and security. In particular, the second independent progress study on youth, peace, and security, mandated under the Pact for the Future. As a member of its advisory group, SCPS has contributed to ongoing reflections on how to strengthen the implementation of youth, peace, and security agenda within the UN system. The study will ultimately be presented to the United Nations General Assembly in September 2026, making these discussions particularly timely and directly relevant to the international policy processes shaping the future of the agenda. The challenges facing our societies today, armed conflict, polarization, climate insecurity, forced displacement, and shrinking civil space, cannot be addressed through isolated approaches. They require cooperation across generations and meaningful partnerships between institutions, civil society, women, and youth. This is why the intersection between the Women, Peace and Security Agenda and the Youth, Peace and Security Agenda is so important. Both agendas seek to create more inclusive societies and more sustainable peace. Both recognize that those most affected by conflict must also have a role in shaping solutions. And both remind us that peace is strongest when it is built through participation, dialogue, and shared responsibility. For this reason, I hope today's discussion will not only deepen our understanding of the intersection between the Women, Peace and Security and Youth, Peace and Security agendas, but also help us identify practical ways to strengthen collaboration, improve implementation, and build more inclusive peace architectures at local, national, and international levels. I look forward to the insights of our distinguished speakers and to exchange of experience that will follow. Allow me to leave you with a question that I hope will guide our discussions this morning. If peace is truly a shared responsibility, how can we ensure that women and young people are not only invited to the table, but are genuinely empowered to shape the discussions that affect their communities, their countries, and our collective future? Thank you once again for being with us today, and welcome to Rome. I'm going to leave the floor to my colleague, Diletta Pascolotto from UN Women, and then to my dearest colleague from the Italian Minister of Foreign Affairs, with whom I had the pleasure to work for the last 3 years, Luca Frattini, coordinator of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, Youth, Peace and Security Agenda, Mediation Policies, and Deputy Director, UN and Human Rights. It was very long.
Dear fellow peacebuilders, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation and for bringing us together for this important conversation. I would like also to extend my gratitude to the co-organizer SCPS and WPSN Canada. She's watching us from online. Hello, Katrina. For their commitment for promoting dialogue, cooperation, and peace. It is a privilege to be here today on behalf of Youth Council of UN Women Italy, representing a generation that believes that peace is not only a global aspiration, but it's a daily responsibility. I would like also to acknowledge the presence of the President of UN Women Italy, Daria Magidi, who is moderating also today's event, and she's been doing very hard work with her fellow senior of the board member to make people understand the importance of gender equality, above all from the institutional level, but also from the bottom up. As Youth Council of UN Women Italy, we aim to bring together the voices of young adults committed to advancing the values and mission of UN Women through concrete action, meaningful dialogue, and volunteering engagement. Our council currently consists of 15 members from the 19 to 46 years old, bridging together academics, professionals, entrepreneurs, and researchers who share a common aspiration to contribute to the construction of a more inclusive, equitable, and socially conscious society. One of the most distinctive dimensions of our initiatives lies in the collaboration between different generations. In our Youth Council, we have 2 different generations. We have Gen Y, Gen Z, united by the conviction that the intergenerational dialogue can serve as powerful catalyst for sustainable social transformation and collective responsibility. Or to put in less formally way, some of us understand TikTok perfectly and some of us are street trying. Through collective reflection, dialogue, and exchange, the Council has identified 4 fundamental pillars that guide both our activities and our public communication. We have our own agenda of youth people called Generation Equality. As the agenda of today, we want to empower a younger generation to sit to the table of decision making. Then we have the campaign He for She to promote the positive masculinities and to have the men beside women all together working for gender equality. We have the WEP, W-E-P, that stands for Women Empowerment Principle, that look for the professional principles in the workplaces. And at the end, but not the least one, we have Orange the World. Orange World, through which it's a campaign that we want to end the gender-based violence in all its forms. The Youth Council aspires to contribute to the development of a generation actively committed to peace building, firmly believe that lasting peace cannot be achieved without the joint engagement of men and women working together, in mutual respect, cooperation, and shared accountability. As we are here today, together with all of you, to remind ourselves how important and essential is dialogue. Dialogue even with those whose views are different from our own, and with whom it may be difficult to agree. The United Nations was founded on the promises of peace, but after 2 devastating world wars. Today, as we can see, conflicts are once again back part of our global reality. We, as today, are not able to stop them, but we are surely able to be part of a small actions and daily choices that together can build a peaceful future. We don't need a single and spectacular gesture to achieve peace. Every day we can make a small act by using the right word, look at different perspectives, have the view of the victims, their perspectives, and never giving up on dialogue, even with the less convenient people. We cannot achieve peace between nations if we are not in peace first with our inner self, then with our neighbors, and finally with the world. To achieve this, we must also be aware of the forces and algorithms that often reward division and conflict and confrontation rather than understanding and cooperation. For this reason, alongside the institutional action, we must invest in education for peace from the ground up. By doing so, we can help create a future rooted in justice, dialogue, and mutual respect. So we can hope one day to leave a world for the future generations with better roots and less injustices. And to make this possible, young people and women must have a seat at the decision table. Their voices, perspective, and leadership are not only important, they are essential to build a more peaceful, inclusive, and sustainable future for all. Thank you.
Buongiorno a tutti. Deputy Executive Director, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, dear friends. It's a great pleasure to join you today and to open this important discussion on the intersections between the women, peace and security and the youth, peace and security agendas. First of all, I'd like to thank Sustainable Cooperation for Peace and Security, the Women, Peace and Security Network of Canada, poor Katrina, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and UN Women Italy for bringing us together at such a timely moment on the eve of the annual meeting of the Women, Peace and Security Focal Points Network here in Rome. We gather at a time when the international community is facing an increasingly complex landscape of crises. Armed conflicts are becoming more frequent. I'm not going to count them, but let me assure you that we are at the highest level ever since the World War II. Polarization is deepening. Humanitarian needs are growing. Trust in our common institutions, including multilateral organizations, is under pressure in many parts of the world. In this context, one lesson has become increasingly clear. In order to preserve peace, our diplomatic tools need to adapt to meet the arising challenges. Both agendas, WPS and YPS, can act as blueprints for action. Data suggests that peace processes that exclude women are less likely to endure. In the same way, peace-building efforts that overlook young people miss some of the most important agents of change within societies. The understanding that exclusion seriously damages peacemaking and resilience lies at the heart of both the agendas. 26 years after the adoption of Security Council Resolution 1325 and more than 10 years after Resolution 2250, we have accumulated considerable evidence that supports this claim. We know that women contribute to more durable peace agreements. We know that engaging with young people can prevent violence. Yet, we also know that meaningful participation in decision-making remains uneven and insufficient. Too often, women and young people are invited only after priorities have been established. Too often, they are consulted without being truly heard. And too often, they are viewed as beneficiaries rather than as equal partners. The intersection between the two agendas offers a particularly powerful opportunity in this regard. Young women are the prime example of this connection. They experience multiple and overlapping forms of exclusion, but at the same time, they're also among the most innovative actors working for peace. Across regions, young women are leading mediation initiatives, strengthening communities, promoting dialogue. However, they continue to face significant barriers to participation and representation. Addressing these shortcomings is not only a matter of rights, it is a matter of effectiveness. As former UN Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld once said, the United Nations was not created to take mankind to heaven, but to save humanity from hell. The same can be said of peace building. We must create practical solutions that move societies away from violence and towards cooperation. That requires drawing on the talents, experiences, and leadership of the entire society, not just a few. Italy strongly believes in this approach. Over the last years, we have worked to advance both agendas at the multilateral level and to strengthen the connections between them. In this regard, at the UN, Italy has co-organized a side event during CSW 69 last year and another in CSW in 2026, both of them dedicated to exploring synergies between the women, peace and security and the youth, peace and security agendas, and promoting the meaningful participation of women and young people in peace building and conflict prevention. Our fifth National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security places particular emphasis on participation, leadership and protection, while recognizing the importance of younger generations. And at the same time, we recently adopted, just 2 months ago, our first National Action Plan on Youth, Peace and Security, making Italy the second country in Europe and among the first globally to develop a dedicated plan on YPS. The plan was co-created thanks to the strong operational partnership between institutions, civil society, academia and youth networks, reflecting our conviction that youth policies should be developed with young people rather than imposed on them. Looking at the broader picture, our two national action plans reflect a simple yet effective observation that inclusion, participation and partnerships are fundamental prerequisites for truly sustainable peace. National action plans, however, are not enough. In order to render them truly effective, increased cooperation among stakeholders is required, alongside investments in capacity building, education and empowerment. In recent years, I've had the opportunity to engage directly with young peace builders from different regions of the world. Whether in the Western Balkans, in the Middle East, in North Africa, or at the global scale in New York, I have consistently been struck by their ability to create spaces for dialogue where formal politics struggles to do so. These experiences always remind us that peace is not only negotiated at formal conference tables. It is also built through personal relationships, trust, and daily acts of dialogue that create meaningful connections. This is precisely why we need to think across generations. Effective peace building requires both experience and innovation, combining leadership and emerging voices. As we prepare for the discussions of the Women, Peace and Security Focal Points Network, meeting tomorrow and after tomorrow at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, I hope we will continue to strengthen these connections. The challenges we face are increasingly interconnected, and our responses must be equally interconnected. Allow me to conclude with a simple reflection. Peace is often described as an outcome, but peace is also a process. It is a practice. It is the transformation of differences into dialogue and of disagreements into cooperation opportunities. Women and young people are not waiting to be included in this effort. Across the world, they are already leading this effort. Our responsibility as policymakers is to ensure that they have the space, the support, and the recognition necessary to do so. I thank you very much. Grazie mille, and welcome to the most beautiful city in the world.
So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. It's an honor, a pleasure, and really thank you to the chair of Women, Peace and Security Network Canada, Katrina, and to Marius for having created this opportunity for all of us to be together and to understand how to collaborate and how to find the dialogue between young people and, let's say, the senior people. I'm so glad to be here because, as Luca was saying, I think that peace is a result of connections, of personal connections. And I'm honored to say that Luca Frattini is one of our first advocates in the He4She program. We launched the He4She program here in Italy last year, and we are really honored that Luca is representing us, and these events that are happening, thanks to Luca, thanks to Professoressa Carletti, are really the pieces of this big building that we are creating and that we hope that really change the situation. We have already said it. Women are not in the tables in this moment that are deciding the future. They're not in the tables that are deciding the huge wars that we are facing. And also, I'm a technical person, I'm a computer scientist. Women are not the tech decision-making, AI-making tables. So what we can do, which are the proposals that we have, and which is the situation in the different experiences. So I'm really honored to moderate this panel. I really thank our panelists, and I will start with Katrina, that she really was the person who thought about this event, and I would ask her if she can tell us the huge experience that Canada already have in this intersection and in the creation of this collaboration between young people and women, peace and security agendas. Katrina.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, I also want to add my thanks. As Luca has said, it is actually 3 a.m. for me here in central Canada, and I do apologize that I cannot be with you in person, although I am very energized this very early morning to be joining you online. I'm teaching in a few hours a summer intensive course on international human rights law at the University of Winnipeg, and so I could not miss our first day of class, unfortunately, to be with you. But nonetheless, technology is allowing this participation, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm very grateful to all of you, and particularly to Marius from the Sustainable Cooperation for Peace and Security, because we are embarking in this journey of partnership, which is the very purpose of the synergy between women and youth peace and security. I'm also particularly grateful to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Italy and our own Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Canada for bringing together these two agendas in ways that are substantial in our foreign policies. And this is exemplified by the importance that Luca has placed on the synergy of both agendas in his work, and also by our former ambassador on women, peace, and security, who you'll hear from in a moment, Jackie O'Neill, who has been one of our biggest champions of the intersection of young people and women's rights in our peace and security infrastructure in Canada. So I'm very grateful, Jackie, you're able to be here. I can't see you in the zoomed in screen, but I know you are there.
She's here.
Oh, I see you. And I'm very grateful to UN Women Italy and UN Women HQ colleagues who have been championing these agendas also within very challenging political moments and challenging political landscapes, especially in the recent years. I'm grateful that the DED is with us and we'll be able to hear from you as well, to be able to discuss some of these questions about the silos, but also about the intersections. And I have to also note that the chair of the board of the Global Network of Women Peacebuilders, I see, is in the room as well, vice chair of the CEDAW committee, Vandana Rana. I'm very glad to see you, Vandana. GNWP, with my former employer, has done a lot of work on that intersection and is one of the main organizations across the world who has been working directly with local women and youth peace builders to elevate their perspectives and ensure that policy meets practice. And then before I really jump into the meat of the question, I also am grateful that a dear friend and close collaborator, Simone Diouf, is with us today. You'll hear from her in a moment, the former Youth Ambassador for Peace from West Africa for the African Union. Simone is too humble to say it, but has been contributing to more than 20 different national action plans and women and youth peace and security processes across West and Central Africa. So I've had the pleasure of working with Simone, and so I'm very grateful, Simone, that you've made your way to Rome and that we'll be able to hear from your perspective. So folks, my name is Catherine Leclerc. I currently am the chair of the Women, Peace and Security Network in Canada. I also am an advisor and co-founder of our Canadian Coalition for Youth, Peace and Security. And so when Marius and I were in Geneva in December, and we heard, of course, that Italy was going to be formally co-chairing with the Philippines, the Focal Points Network, I said to Marius, we absolutely need to take an opportunity when it is there and seize it and propose to the MFA this type of convening about the intersection. Because, of course, as you've heard from Luca, the National Action Plan on Youth, Peace and Security at the time was still in final stages of development. And of course, the Women, Peace and Security National Action Plan is far along in its implementation process. And Italy has been a leader very much in the space. I have to give credit where credit is due in terms of ensuring that young women are part and young people are part of this important decision-making processes. This is something that Canada has done in different ways in our space, and I'll answer the question first from a civil society perspective, and then I think we're doing 2 rounds of questions, so I'll talk about our policy in the second round. But from our perspective as civil society, and I have to acknowledge as well that civil society is a diverse space in Canada, like it is in many other countries, and so I'm not speaking on behalf of all of civil society. I'm certainly speaking about my own experience within civil society and our Women, Peace and Security Network. In 2020, when Canada was starting to look at developing a formal feminist foreign policy and starting to explore the drafting of our 3rd National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security, young people, myself included, decided that we needed a formal space to be able to coordinate together on youth, peace and security. It was an opportunity, a political moment where youth, peace, and security had been part of our foreign policy, but never named in practice. And so youth, peace, and security was nowhere to be seen in our foreign policy documents. It was somehow still part of the way that Canada was implementing its foreign policy, but it wasn't named in the actual form. And when we talk about this, youth, peace, and security, just for those who are less familiar perhaps with the agenda, we are talking about young adults. We are talking, generally speaking, of 18 to 30 or 35 years old, individuals who've lived various experiences in their lives, but are in the earlier years of adulthood. And so they're not children, right? We are not children, we come with a myriad of experiences and also certain expertise that contribute to peace building in a variety of ways. So when the Canadian Coalition on Youth, Peace and Security was created, it was an intentional decision to join the Women, Peace and Security Network, who had existed far before, now is celebrating 15 years next year in our own civil society network here. And it was an intentional decision to join that civil society space. The reason being that many of us who had been part of working on women and youth peace and security in other fora had identified and been told and also experienced the very big silo that policy and practice still currently struggles with. In the sense that young women, those of us who identify both with the gender of women and with the age category of young women or young people, were feeling excluded when they were entering women, peace, and security spaces, which is dominated primarily by older women who have been championing the agenda now for more than 26 years. And the youth, peace, and security space was primarily dominated by young men who had experienced or were part of the dialogue and discourse around radicalization and preventing violent extremism, which is where youth, peace, and security emerged as a policy infrastructure. And so as young women, we felt excluded from both spaces, being told that we are too young to be in the women, peace, and security space and too women-y or too female to be in the youth, peace, and security space. And so that's why from our Canadian perspective, we decided as young people who are creating this Canadian Coalition on Youth, Peace and Security to enter the civil society space on women, peace and security intentionally. And at the time, we did not know what would happen in terms of developing our next National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security, but we did know that to be effective peace builders and to be able to enter in dialogue, we needed to be in spaces where discussions were being had. And so that's why the Women, Peace and Security Network, which I now have the privilege of chairing, was an opening for us. It was an opportunity to engage. And this is something that I've observed. I've worked in almost 40 countries, especially through my time as program director at the Global Network of Women Peacebuilders. And what I've observed in all of these different countries is a very similar experience, where the siloing of both civil society spaces mirrors the siloing of the policy space and mirrors the siloing in practice. And so I'm very grateful that we're having these conversations, especially at the WPS Focal Points Network, because there are so many opportunities for this overlap between both political agendas, peace and security agendas, to be able to shape the lives, both in policies and in practice, of young women who continue to experience and contribute to peace building in their communities. So I'll stop there for now and hand it back over to you, Daria, and very, very grateful to be with you all virtually today.
Thank you, Katrina, for your courage, for your determination, for your, changing needs passion, needs energy. So really thank you for what you've done, and I'm sure that you will do a lot more in the future. And as you mentioned, we have another doer here, so I'm happy to give the voice to Simone, which, as Katrina said, she's been leading these conversations and these agendas in West Africa. So, Simone.
Thank you. Thank you, Daria. Happy to be here, recognizing familiar face, Bandana, Peve. Maybe she don't recognize me, but she was one of my first mentors with the Young Woman Mentorship Initiative with the African Union. So it was back in 2022. So that's why mentorship is very important for me, because I had good mentors. And also my dear friend, former boss with the GNWP, Bandana and Katrina. I was also part of the GNWP family as Program Officer for Africa. So just wanted to contribute also to this conversation. As a young woman, African young woman, have been working both in the WPS and YPS agenda, contributing, developing, and writing both WPS and YPS now. So today I have like 3 messages to share. Regarding the synergies between WPS and YPS, I am really convinced that it's a construction site. It's not a deal. We have been talking about it a lot. And I always share it. Last time I talked about it in the Global Coalition meeting. I said, since 2022, I have been hearing WPS and YPS in the same sentence. People want to put them together. My problem is, how are you doing it? That's why I salute the work of Italy. I was in CSW 2025 during that side event in the African Union, and I also expressed my frustration, saying, since 2022, I have been hearing it, but how are you doing it in the field, in NAPS? So that's what I wanted to share today, because that's what I'm trying to do. Second things, it's about also young women. So I think that Katrina have started this discussion explaining why we need to do it. But for me, we need to also go further. We have been having this discussion. It's important to remind, because sometimes it's not evident. But how can we do it in the field right now? Through projects, through programs, but also through NAPS. It's important also to come back to NAPS. Yes, for me, this process of bringing the synergies between the two agendas should be intentional. We need to really think about it. How can we really do it in the field? For me, that's also something I wanted to discuss. As Katrina said, yes, we had the agenda, the 3025 in 2000. 15 years later, we had 2250. So the two agenda was separate. We had like two different coordination mechanism, different budgeting mechanism. It's like two different words. So now the resolution 2250 arrived 15 years later and had to join this word. For me, we didn't manage to really put them together, make them work together. We have tried in our discourse, saying yes, it's important because they have the same pillars: participation, prevention. Young women are here. But now, when it's come to really empowering young women, how are you doing it? For me, it's the question we should ask, a difficult question, because we have been saying it for a long time now. We need to act regarding the synergy. How can we really do it in the field? For me, I will come back on that regarding the role of young women. I'm not saying it because I'm a young woman, because it's because also I have been working with them through in Africa, globally, and it's in West Africa. I am the former African Union Youth Ambassador for Peace. I just finished my mandate 2 months ago. And in each cohort, it's a program that have been developed by the African Union to appointed 5 young leaders for 2 years to advocate for YPS. But since the beginning of the program back in 2018, we have more young women than young men. It was intentional, because those young women coming was bringing the WPS agenda. That's why we have been privileged to brief the UN Security Council. I briefed the UN Security Council in 2024 in the synergies between the two agenda, to brief the PAC, the Peace and Security Council of the African Union, each November also. Brief them not only on the YPS, but also on the WPS. What are we doing for young women? It was important for us. And each cohort, we have brilliant young women from Central Africa, West Africa, North Africa, that also bring the two perspectives. I'm also privileged to run a young woman organization in my country, Senegal, appelle GFF Senegal. It's a young woman-led organization that I have created with a sister. And what we are doing in my country is trying also to bring that conversation. My country, we have our second generation NAP. And when you read the NAP, as a young woman, you are very disappointed. You see what you are saying. We are presented as victims, as beneficiaries, but never as actors, agents of change. And it's the same pattern. So that's the conversation now we are trying to bring. but I must recognize that we are doing great in Africa generally regarding the synergies. When it's coming from the African Union with the Office of the Special Envoy on WPS with the program of the Political Affairs, Peace and Security, and also at the national level. Because Katrina and I was involved in so many NAP processes in Chad, in Senegal, in the Gambia. And what I saw was very impressive. Those young women coming from the WPS background are running the YPS. I'm one of them. I came from a WPS background, a product of GNWP.
It's interesting.
Yes, and that's what I'm trying to do with synergies. But I will come back. Yes, I will come back on the NAP. But yes, because I wrote also the Senegalese NAP on youth peace and security, and maybe I can come back on how also writing a NAP, you should be intentional on bringing the indicators from the WPS NAP in the YPS. Make those NAP talk together. Maybe I can come back on that with Chad as example, and also Senegal.
Thank you really, Simone, for again your energy, your passion, and I really admire young women that have very clear the focus of the change that we have to face. And I really think that I used to be the young in the, yes, I used to be the young in the entrepreneur association here in Italy, which is called Confindustria, which is a very male association. They're all male. And since I'm an entrepreneur, I used to be the young. And we used to feel this frustration of saying, hey, we're not here just to, have fun. We have companies, we have responsibilities. And what we did that maybe could be interesting, we fighted and we won the fight to have quotas in the Women, Peace and Security Board. And that was, for them, it was mandatory to have them. And we had the vice presidency. So the young people had the vice presidency of the Women, Peace and Security, let's say, the situation. So we will talk about it. Thank you so much. So let's hear Italy. We have finally our NAP. Now I've learned this acronym, so which is not NAP. It's exactly, it's a very important achievement. So, Cristiana.
Thank you, moderator. My dearest Daria. Yes, at the end of the day, we have the first National Action Plan on Youth, Peace and Security, the Italian one. Distinguished panelists, excellencies, colleagues, and above all, the young people who is in the room and is also connected online today. As our coordinator, Luca Frattini, reminded us before, here there is a specific day starting from which the week we have tomorrow and after tomorrow, the gathering of the annual meeting of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda Focal Points Network. And of course, Italy at the same time recently, exactly 16th of April this year, has adopted the first National Action Plan on Youth, Peace and Security 2026-2029. As a preliminary consideration, I would like to frame the overarching question driving my reflection around the core of this side event. Are the Women, Peace and Security and Youth, Peace and Security agendas genuinely intersecting frameworks or parallel tracks that risk speaking past one another? And if, second sub-question, intersection is the strategic imperative, as I believe it is, though there are very big differences between the agendas, what are the normative architecture, the institutional mechanisms, and the governance gaps that condition that intersection? The answer matter enormously for practitioners, for diplomats, and above all for all the young women, as Simone has reminded us just 1 minute ago, and also Katrina has very prominently introduced in her statement, whose compound agency and compound vulnerabilities sit precisely at the crossroad of both agendas. The adoption of the first YPS plan marks an important milestone. It reflects Italy's conviction that young people are not merely beneficiaries of peace and security policies, but essential partners and agents of change in conflict prevention, in peace building, in crisis response, and above all in post-conflict recovery. The development of our NAP was featured by a broad and inclusive consultation process. It began at that time in 2024 through an interinstitutional working group. It is a close working group involving, under the coordination of the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Department of Youth Policies of the Prime Minister Office, the Italian Youth Agency, the National Youth Council, and the Interministerial Committee for Human Rights, placed in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. Crucially, the process extended well beyond government institutions. Civil society organizations, youth-led organizations, academic institutions, and research centers actively contributed to the drafting process. There have been three main steps in this process. The first was a nationwide survey carried out by a major polling institute, Italian institute, Istituto Piepoli, targeting a broad sample of the Italian youth population across the countries. And its results reveal extensive knowledge of the UN system, but unfortunately, limited awareness of the YPS agenda. It was a very interesting starting point on which we have worked upon in order to compile the NAP. Second step, a meeting organized by the Italian Youth Agency in Rome, here in the premises of this very important office, in April 2025, with young people from across the country working in groups to produce operational recommendations for each pillar of the YPS agenda. And third step, a second meeting that was carried out remotely by the National Youth Council in May 2025, structured around an in-depth thematic analysis of Resolution 2250 and complementary UN materials or the other UN Security Council resolution. Now we have the plan that was the result of these three steps, interesting and very dynamic. The plan is structured around, of course, the 5 pillars of the YPS agenda, so participation, protection, prevention, partnerships, and disengagement and reintegration. But the plan also includes cross-cutting themes: the environment, climate, peace nexus, digital challenges, food security, cultural rights, and of course, the intersection between the WPS and YPS agendas. There is a specific section dedicated to this kind of intersection, in which we have developed a very interesting, detailed idea about how this intersection could work. Young women occupy a dual position of weakness and strength. They face structural barriers affecting all youth in accessing decision-making processes, and the gendered barrier that the WPS agenda has sought, with only from time to time partial success, to dismantle. That compound position demands an equally articulated policy response. Italy NAP on YPS explicitly acknowledged this point. It is not enough to run the two agendas in parallel. In our view, they must be made to speak to one another through integrated governance, shared indicators, and deliberate institutional alignment. I stop here, but I suppose that there will be enough room for detailing how this governance will work in future months. Thank you.
Thank you, Cristiana. And I would like to share the panel with Gala Ivkovic, Rondine d'Oro. So I would really love to have her point of view.
Hello, everyone. It's a really big privilege. I was looking around the room, and I feel very honored to be meeting you today and talking to you and exchanging experiences. I'm a board member of Rondine International Peace Lab, which is an association that deals directly with conflicts, and I'm going to explain you a bit more what is it that we do, and I'm also a member of Sustainable Cooperation for Peace and Security. When it comes to these two agendas, they were built on a simple yet very transformative principle. Peace is more sustainable, more inclusive, and more effective when women and young people participate meaningfully in shaping it. Of course, a significant progress has been made, but women particularly continue to be underrepresented in peace negotiations, mediation processes, and political decision-making. At the same time, though, a new generation of young women is emerging in some of the world's more fragile regions. They're community leaders, they're educators, they're entrepreneurs, activists, and peace builders. Yet their contributions often remain insufficiently recognized, and their participation in formal decision-making remains limited. For this reason, I believe that one of the most important challenges ahead is to straighten the connection between these two agendas. The question is how institutions can create the conditions for women and young people to exercise meaningful leadership and influence decisions. This is where the intersection is particularly important. Today, more than 600 million young people live in fragile and conflict-affected environments. I think this is a very shocking data. At Rondine, what is it that we do? Students from all over the world, of course, from conflict-affected areas, come together and live together for a prolonged period of time. Students from Israel and Palestine, Russia and Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Abkhazia, Serbia, Bosnia, and so forth, come together in order to actually bring up front what is peace building in theory. It's particular because this experience leads beyond coexistence. It's not a very short period of time where you put maybe experts and activists and peace builders in a room to negotiate or to discuss or to find solutions. These students, these young people have the courage to actually live together. So this is, I think, a crucial step for a sustainable peace. We need more time to just be together. So, as I was saying, in our experience, young women, especially in Rondine, emerge as some of the most effective bridge builders across divided communities. We have so many examples of ex-students of Rondine that are actually involved actively in political life, social life, and even entrepreneurial life in their countries. Of course, sometimes this kind of leadership is less visible, but is not less essential. Students are challenged to transform division into dialogue because everybody brings, of course, their own experience, which is quite often obviously negative, to a common space. But they manage to turn the experience into civic responsibility and cooperation. Education is at the heart of this process, of course. However, it's a very particular kind of education. It's not a mere transmission of knowledge, it's not mere transmission of theory. It should also develop critical thinking. It should develop emotional intelligence, which is something that we often overlook as a life skill. And of course, conflict management skills and the ability to lead across the differences. So we're talking about a systemic approach rather than trying to concentrate on isolated problems. We have to look at the society as a whole and approach to it as a whole. Our experience also demonstrates that sustainable peace is fundamentally an intergenerational endeavor. Lasting solutions emerge when the experiences of established leaders and institutions is combined with energy, is combined with innovation and perspective of younger generations. We already mentioned that before, and I think that's one of the most important points that we need to elaborate even further. These two agendas provide a framework, of course, for making this collaboration intentional rather than incidental. At the same time, of course, education alone is not sufficient. Across the world, youth employment is one of the most critical points that are becoming even more and more exposed, and is higher than adult unemployment. In many post-conflict environments, as you can imagine, young women and youth in general face additional barriers because there are not enough opportunities. Economic empowerment is not to separate from peace building, of course. It's one of the essential foundations. This is why access to employment, entrepreneurship is really crucial. We need to invest in peace in different ways, and maybe we're gonna tackle that second part later on. But of course, I just put it a random Italian word. Yes, I think that many young women and youth can actually be way more involved into more complex programs, and maybe, yes, later on we can also mention a couple of the real life examples. Thank you.
Thank you, Gala, and really thank you for the experience that you are telling us. This fact that these people live together, I think, is the real thing, because otherwise these stereotypes and this hate remains. While if you really live with the other, you understand that we are all the same and that we have all the same feelings, rights, and dreams. So this is so interesting. So I would finish the first round with Sara, co-president, Yuhari, co-president of the Sustainable Cooperation for Peace and Security, so one of the hosts of the event. So Sara.
Thank you. Thank you, Daria. And I also wanted to thank all the guests here today with us. It's also a privilege and honor, as Gala said, to be here and with also to be enlightened and also inspired by other women, because I see a lot of women today. I'm very happy to be part of this panel. I don't know why. Thank you. So, concerning our question, I would say that as a youth lead and women lead organization, because we share the presidency with Marius, we have this new rules from this last year. So we share we have a gender balanced presidency, and also from my journey as an activist, I've been activist since I was 14 years old. Now I'm 32. I'm almost not so young for the European Union, because I know that we are young until 35 years old, if I'm not mistaken. So I still have 3 years to go before I cannot use anymore the young title. I really see this intersection happening in the grassroots level, because, for instance, in the Italian context, if we look at the social sector, women and young people are at the forefront, are the driving forces of the social sector. And you can see them involved in community initiatives, in volunteering, in building bridges, but yet this contribution is not fully, let's say, and proportionally often translated in leadership position, in governance structure, and also in presence in the decision-making spaces. So this is, let's say, this is one of our first obstacles. So it's happening, the intersection at ground level. But then when it comes to policies, we see here that we are still discussing if it's a silos, they are working, they are talking. So it's still a matter of that we need still to brainstorm together as our practitioners. And also, as we know, young people and women are facing similar barriers when it comes to participation and representation in decision-making spaces, as we said, while still having distinct, different experience, priorities, and needs. And I think that this is very reflected and recognized in the Italian YPS NAP. We do have a paragraph that is entirely about the intersection of the YPS and WPS. And also, I think that this is also the strength of the Italian process that led to the YPS, because indeed, thanks to this, I would say, the political imagination, as Ambassador Frattini loves to say, and the political openness of the Italian institutions to really embed this variety of perspective, valuing the different perspective, and also bringing together organization, because one of part, as Professor Saccarletti said, really civil society organizations were involved in drafting important part of the NAP. And this is very, I think this was a very important step, not for only the institution, but also for us, because as an organization, we were part of this process. And what we learned first is that really meaningful participation, it requires time, because indeed, we spent 2.5 years, almost 3 years, to develop the NAP. It requires time, but also it requires shared responsibility, because I was working in the working group, and I was writing there some of the points, and I was not surprised to see that those elements were integrated, because I really like coming from all this journey of discussing together. I was very sure that contribution from young people will be integrated in the NAP, and indeed this was what happened. So this was also very important and an experience for us as a youth lead organization. And because we were not just were simply invited to participate, we contributed ideas, and also we genuinely were part of the dialogue. And and if I might say, one of the most important for me and most innovative point of the NAP, the Italian National Action Plan YPS, is that it clearly mentioned the diaspora, and it clearly mentioned women networks. I reviewed the NAP, and the word of women appears 15 times, and it doesn't appear randomly. It appears in very important section of the NAP, and in very reinforce the idea of bringing together young women and young people together. So this was very, for me, very enlightening. And also I think that the Italian National Action Plan was one of the first that mentioned diaspora very clearly in the NAP. So I think we are also pioneer in that sense. And again, this is thanks to the political vision of the institutional leaders that were part of this, that lead this journey. And what I wanted to say, and a bit also to close, because I guess we are very, yes, very tight. So it's very important to, connecting to diaspora, it's very important to keep this element of diaspora in the national action plans, because for instance, in the, looking at the Italian context, also the international cooperation is moving beyond the ordinary way of doing cooperation, but it's looking also to diasporas as a bridge to do cooperation, international cooperation. And since Italy, it's very involved in international missions and international peacebuilding initiative, I think that was why this is very, very important to re-highlight it again in this NAP. Thank you.
Your very practical experience in writing this important document. And I'm really honored to have our DED of UN Women here, because I think that your presence here really is an important message that we have to do something in order to have these young girls and young ladies really seeing it, this thing of the intersection, of the cooperation, of a word that I underline is a formal space. Because when we talk about it, it's something, yes, we all agree, but we need a formal space, a recognition in the governance. So how we can achieve this, how we can really give voice to the young people, not only just to hear their voice, but really in the decision-making approach. Because the world is theirs. We are leaving this world to them. And it's not even fair that we decide for them. So how we can do this seems one problem to me. And another problem, it seems to how we can really have women, young and old, but women on the important tables where we are completely underrepresented and we are missing. So we work in the back, we are in the civil society, but who decides if to push a button or not, unfortunately in this moment, is not a woman. So two problems we have. How we can accelerate this collaboration, this synergy concretely and in an accountable way with KPIs, with something that we can measure, and how we can also push to have women really in the important rooms and in the important places where peace is approached. So I ask every panelist to be short, please, because we have a few minutes. So Katrina, starting from you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I will try to be short. So the first thing I wanted to mention is on national action plans themselves, because as we know, most countries who are part of the WPS Focal Points Network have adopted national action plans on women, peace, and security. In 2021, the Global Network of Women Peacebuilders did an initial analysis of all national action plans on women, peace, and security. And part of the analysis was identifying which national action plans also included reference to young people, young women, or youth, peace, and security. And in 2021, we found that about less than 25% of the national action plans at the time included any reference to young women. And so in the last 5 years, there has been a shift to this kind of increasing recognition, a lot of it being the civil society leadership encouraging and advocating for more synergies. But nonetheless, the majority of national action plans on women, peace, and security remain age blind. I have to admit that the youth, peace, and security space is not better. It continues to be, in many cases, gender blind. And so that advocacy in that space continues to be important and led by many of us. But I wanted to kind of put this in perspective, because we're not talking about everybody doing this perfectly. And even those of us who are trying to do this synergy are struggling to find ways to do this in a meaningful, substantive way. So if I'm looking at the Canadian example, so in Canada, when we were developing the third National Action Plan, the way that our National Action Plan functions is that we have what I like to call an umbrella plan, so the third National Action Plan, and each departments who have signed on, because we have different departments who have signed on, several of them, have their own department plans that are attached to the national one. And if you're looking at the National Action Plan, there are 15 mentions of youth, 8 mentions of youth, peace, and security, and 9 mentions of young women. So from a quantitative perspective, it's a huge amelioration of previous iterations. If you look, though, at the department plans, which are the plans that demonstrate how each of our departments are going to implement the actual plan, where budgets will be allocated, where political attention is supposed to be put, there is far less attention to young people, young women, and youth, peace, and security. There is only our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Global Affairs Canada, who has 1 mention of youth, peace, and security in its department plan. There is no other mention of youth, peace, and security in the department plans. There are, however, many mentions of youth. So, for example, our Department of Public Safety has 13 mentions of youth, so gender blind, but nonetheless age-oriented, and actually primarily speaking about how young people experience online harassment and respond to cyber and digital protection concerns. And so some of this needs to be taken apart, because it is not sufficient to only think about quantitative indicators. And so the question becomes, how do you implement something? Because one quantitative mention could end up being very substantial, and multiple mentions may not actually turn out to be substantial or meaningful. So this is the first component of what I would advise or recommend or reflect on or offer as reflections. The second is the importance of naming the agenda and the synergy in itself. I've had long conversations with colleagues at Global Affairs and in other departments in Canada about how many of the policies that we develop and then implement do have a gender and age component, but it is not framed as women, peace, and security and youth, peace, and security synergy. So funding, for example, that Global Affairs Canada gives in Bangladesh for young women's programming through international organizations and international assistance policies is work on the synergies of women, peace, and security and youth, peace, and security, but isn't packaged that way. It's not framed that way, and it's not documented that way, which also makes it difficult for the monitoring and evaluation component of the work to implement national action plans. So that is kind of a way to reorient some of the work that is already happening, because many of our countries are already doing some of this work, but it's not being recognized or acknowledged that way. And that's one of our pitfalls. The fact very much that we do not name or recognize the significance of that intersection in the policies themselves. But in practice, as Simon has pointed out, we don't live our lives in silos. We cannot one day be young and the other be women. We are both at the same time. And so our policies need to reflect that. The other part of this, and I know we've been talking about intersections today, but
to be very short because we have to close the panel. So
excellent.
I really thank you, but please be short.
One last thing then. So the other thing I wanted to raise is because we've been talking about the intersection, it also has to come with the acknowledgement and recognition that there are differences in realities and that the agendas themselves, both women and youth, peace and security, do have distinct experiences that they represent and that they address. And so working at the intersections is about the overlap, but it's not about making the two agendas the same. It's also about recognizing that there are differences and different demographics that are offered protections and opportunities and leadership through both of these agendas that should be speaking to each other, but they are not the same. So with that, thank you so much. I'll pass it back to you, Daria.
Thank you so much, Katrina. And so really going in the proposals, we are talking about a formal space, a formal governance, a shared governance. We are talking about naming things. We are talking about KPIs. So we are proposing how we can really do this synergy and this collaboration. Obviously, the agendas are different, but the intersection is so evident to everybody. Simon.
Okay, I will also try to be quick. To respond to your question, for me, I have two things. First, the NAPs. Katrina always say that I'm obsessed with NAP. I'm even doing my research on NAPs. And what I have been seeing is like very, very good practice to bring both agenda together. First, during the development process, gender balance during the consultation. We have been doing huge consultation, make sure to have gender balance, have young woman consultation. That's what we did in Senegal. We had specific young woman consultation during our NAP process. And we bring partners like UN Women, we bring UNFPA, the gender ministry. They was part in our task force because we have a YPS task force that had developed our NAP. Also, we look at the narrative of our NAP. We look at what narrative we had. We look at the activities, and we now try to bridge both NAP by having shared indicators, having also shared coordination. Right now, we have an interministerial committee for our both NAP. This didn't exist. Now, second thing is the project in the program. If we want the agenda to converge, let's equip young women and also push to have a young woman organization. Right now, I'm implementing with my organization, APLGFF, a program named Pioneers of Peace, funded by La Francophonie. It's a young woman program for West Africa, so 6 Francophone countries, Senegal included. And what we are focusing is what we have seen that is missing, is funding. Fund young women organizers. They exist, just we didn't see them. Most of them give up peace building and focus on sexual and reproductive health because they don't have any funding and they are not capacitated. Training and capacity building, they need it. Start with the basics. And third thing, mentorship. It's very, very interesting to have also the generational also discussion for them to see that we have big women that we are seeing, Mama Binte Job, that we can do it. Like we can be young women peace builders. So for me, working on project and program is also important to bridge also those agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yes, I think we are shaping it, the proposal. Christiana, you already talked about shared governance.
Exactly. It is really important. Thank you very much again, Dania, for giving me the floor. We think that one of the most significant features of the first National Action Plan on YPS is properly monitoring and evaluation. This is a very important framework, as Katrina said, for the Canadian experience. Our plan adopts a results-oriented approach based on specific objectives, measurable actions, and the ad hoc working group 2250, it is the name of the group, the working group working on it, They are starting very recently the compilation of the indicators to monitor and evaluate the implementation of the NAP. It is not only a technical exercise, merely a technical exercise, it is a political commitment, as you mentioned before, to accountability. We are convinced that this evaluation component will transform the NAP from a static policy commitment into a living instrument capable of adapting to emerging challenges and evolving realities. And it also represents a governance innovation because by linking indicators explicitly to the 5 pillars of the agenda and also the cross-cutting themes, the plan creates a basis for accountability that mirrors and should be systematically connected to the monitoring architecture that yet exists for the WPS national action plans. Yet a word of caution is necessary, as Katrina raised before. Both the agendas share a structural fragility. Their normative core rests on the UN Security Council resolutions that call upon, invite, and urge rather than mandate. So, implementation depends heavily on national political will, domestic institutional capacity, and dedicated financial resources, as Simone reminded us. And the most recent UN Secretary General report on the YPS agenda acknowledged that while institutionalization has progressed, it has not been matched by adequate targeted funding. So this is the main reason why the NAP explicitly seeks to address this challenge, which is common to in many YPS national action plans as well. One major point, that is the last one on my side, the second major challenge for us, but I think also for the other countries that have yet had YPS plan, is the localization of the implementing action of the agenda in each country. National action plans, well crafted at the central level, risk remaining paper commitments unless their implementation is brought closer to communities, municipalities, and civil society actors that actually shape women and young people lived realities. So the governance architecture of the Italian YPS NAP establishes a multi-level dialogue architecture engaging local, national, regional, and international bodies. The challenge nowadays is to make that architecture operational, that is to ensure that national commitments translate into local action, and that local actors at the same time are empowered with the resources, the knowledge, and the institutional support necessary to implement the plan in ways that are context sensitive and genuinely participatory. I stop here.
Thank you, Cristiana. And it seems to me that we have, let's say, a template from where to start. So if this idea is already there, we can use it, we can share it, and we can make it become a reality. So closing observation, Gala.
Very briefly, 2 things. I think that listening a bit, you know, what we said today and working on the field and just having, you know, a bit of experience, I think that we're missing the connectors. Connectors are the people that actually put everybody together in the same room. We should definitely work on creating and engaging and educating more connectors. I think there are going to be the main actors that can put everybody, local governments, regional, civic society, and so forth, in the same room or in the same space, and actually start working on concrete action plan. We do have a structure, and I think this is great news. It's just brilliant news for all of us. But the support system needs to be even more. The support system, I mean, stronger pipelines for especially women, because I remember as a kid, I always looked at my mom was really impressed by everything that she did. So we need more role models, real life role models that can actually pass on the passion for the further development. And the second thing is, of course, economical bridging. So let's work more on giving women same opportunities as men, and giving young people more opportunities rather than excluding them because they're young. So we can, you know, work on these two focal points. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gala. Sarah?
Even more briefly. I would say that if I have to leave a message, there will be two. The first one also, following what has been already said, like the NAPs are not enough, so we need to make them more local and really like bringing them at a regional level, a local level. And this because also coming from a practitioner, for instance, in my region, we still have a youth policy from 2014, and I worked on that. I was a young person, and now like it's almost 10 years after, we still have the same local regional youth policy. The same applies to gender policies. In my region again, they have this new initiative about quota in society by guaranteeing some kind of benefits to companies. But this really was an initiative that for me lacks vision. It was totally disconnected from what's happening at also corporate level. And so we can really see that we really need to bring the NAPs at more regional level. So also local authorities can they can be inspired from these NAPs to really implement meaningful policies and not policies disconnected from the reality. So this is the first. The second one, resources. It was already mentioned. For me, investing is not just about the money, it's investing in the people. Because if we really value young people and women as essential actors of peace building, we need to invest them in terms also of capacities, this was already said, but also scale up what we have already, so scale, like involve more young women and young people already are doing the great work in the field. So this is very important. And really, last message is really to try to bring them up closer. So also really like young women as me, like young women from Perugia or from, I don't know, from Dakar or from Rabat can really see herself reflected in policies and also see herself in the decision-making spaces.
Sarah, so I think that this panel was really interesting, a lot of experiences, a lot of voices, a lot of stories, and maybe concluding we can say two things. One is obviously the governance, so we have to find a way, so if we have already the Italian template, let's call it, we can use it. So how to really make these two systems in a formal way and in a named way collaborate. And the second, which is even more important for me, is that yes, we have to do this merge, we have to collaborate, but maybe the real problem is that we are not on the real tables. So together, young women and senior women, we have to push and to change things. Because every time there is a situation where the decision-making is only in a few hands, and these few people are only men, I'm really scared. Thank you so much. Okay, so Marius, you do the moderation? Should I call somebody?
Okay, thank you very much to everyone. I'm going to give the floor for remarks and key takeaways to Ambassador Jacqueline O'Neill, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. I'll be brief before we hear from Niardzai as well. Buongiorno, I should say, I hope, to all of the young people in the room, and as Daria said, the former young people in the room. I really want to thank all of our panelists and our moderator, thank SCPS, UN Women Italy, and the broader UN Women family, and of course the Women, Peace and Security Network of Canada, and my dear sister Katrina, who is up in the middle of the night in a much less beautiful setting, I'm afraid to say, than the most beautiful city in the world. So thank you all. Because Katrina did such a wonderful job of explaining our context, I can be extremely brief. I do want to congratulate Italy and for all of you who worked on the Youth, Peace and Security National Action Plan. All of us who've had the pen in some way, in some type of action plan, we know how intensive that is and what a significant amount of work that is, and how to do it well. You need to do it a little bit slowly at least, and not let AI draft your national action plan, because that's not going to get you what you need. So we really want to thank you. Canada does not have a national action plan on youth, peace, and security. I hope that someday we can join you. As Katrina said, we mention it in our national action plan on women, peace, and security. And the reason why we do that is because of civil society. It's because civil society led us there and helped us to understand why we need it. Through the Women, Peace and Security Network of Canada, through other activists, as Katrina said, we have a very diverse and strong civil society in Canada, and they are the reason that we reference youth and young women in our action plan to name that connection, as Katrina said. They made sure that we engaged young people in drafting the content of our national action plan. They were among the most vocal advocating for LGBTQ+ inclusion, for young Indigenous Canadian women's rights. They talked about digital issues. And civil society and young people in civil society are very much ensuring we actually implement our plan and do what we say. Funding was named. It is named all the time as a very important element. It is never as much as it should be, and that's something we have to keep focusing on, as Simone and so many others said. And also our ongoing engagement and integration. I would say we just heard about the importance of being connectors. I think that I became a connector because I was educated by young women in civil society. In terms of how I undertook the role of ambassador for Women, Peace and Security, how we're engaging going forward. When Canada was the co-chair, as Italy is now, of the Women, Peace and Security Focal Points Network, 2020 to 2021, I think, we made sure we had dialogue, multi-generational dialogues and dialogues on inclusion. So much of that came from our Women, Peace and Security and Youth, Peace and Security activists. So I'll wrap up just by saying that, of course, we're all facing many challenges right now. And one of the challenges we named at the very beginning is a shrinking space for civil society, a shrinking space overall, including of funding. And often when there is scarcity, scarcity leads to competition. And we have come a long way in terms of working together and trying to make the connections between youth, peace and security, women, peace and security, and more. And as we are all facing this context of greater scarcity of attention, of funding, of resources, and of peace building, period, I hope we can continue to draw those connections and resolve to work together even more closely, as opposed to letting ourselves go back to more competitive, different spaces, and all in favor of the dialogue that we spoke about. Thank you so much, our colleagues, our Italian colleagues, and thanks to all for organizing the event today. Thanks, Katrina.
Thank you very much, Ambassador O'Neill. Now I have the pleasure to give the floor to the Assistant Secretary General and Deputy Executive Director of UN Women, Madam Nyarazai Kumbonzavanda. I hope I did pronounce it perfectly. The floor is yours to give a closing remark and maybe, why not, commitments.
Thank you so much. We always talk about women being on the table, sitting on the table. So me, I'm going to sit on the table. I'm going to sit on the table because we are asking ourselves to be sitting on the table. And offering ourselves the right to do so. Thank you so much. It's also when you are Thank you so much. Let me start by appreciating the organizers of this extraordinary 1.5 hours that we have had of deep discussions. It's also so special to be in this room. You have to go back to understand this building, understand this room, and its significance to the discussions that we are having when we are talking about Parliament. And for us, this is very important. Indeed, I want to recognize and appreciate Your Excellency, Luca Frattini. Thank you so much. And thank you for Italy to being co-host of the focal points together with the Philippines for this year. We really, really appreciate. My sister, Jacqueline O'Neill, we've been in this journey together for a long time, and it's great to continue to see where we are and how we are moving forward. The co-panelists here was just so extraordinary. It was a deep, full discussion. I know that I would like to recognize everybody, including those at the back, and everybody that I know by name or not by name. I'm smiling to my sisters and to my brothers whom we've been working together for many years. So let me start by really emphasizing a certain critical key points that have emerged in our discussions, and which for us as UN women are so much clear, and which you have provided with clarity. That today's world, finding peace in the world today, needs to understand the demographics. That peace is young and peace is feminist. And that is very clear from the discussions that we have had. And that we are anchoring the women peace and security agenda and the youth peace and security agenda within the core of the United Nations Charter, which starts with we the people. It doesn't say we the men, we the old men, we the older women. It says we the people. And so the youth peace and security agenda and the women peace and security agenda is claiming that core ethos of we the people and giving meaning, articulation into it, and rooting that discussion within the framing and the framework that is clear within Article 55 of the United Nations Charter, that we must strive for human rights. We must strive for rights. We must strive for equality, equality of participation and equality of outcomes. We must continue to strive for agency, for the voice of individuals to be part of the solutions. We must continue to strive for justice, because the core pillars of the United Nations are human rights, peace and security, and development. And that Article 55 brings all those together. And that is the ethos of the WPS and the YPS agenda. I was born in war in my country, in Zimbabwe. So I can relate with the YPS agenda, because as a young girl, as an adolescent girl, what I was asking for is to stop the guns so that I can continue to go to school. My objective, I may not have understood the bigger issues of freedoms, but I understood the freedom to go to school and the right to be. But for my mother, which is the WPS, she wanted a number of things. She wanted to be able to write, to vote. She wanted to be able to have independence of her country, but she wanted to go to the garden and grow crops for us without fearing for the guns. So she wanted peace. For her was very personal, was very political, and it was very national. So it is very important that we look into the conceptualization of what does peace mean for each generation and for each group of people. I have just come from a wonderful countries, 2 countries, and I want to reflect on this. Storytelling is part of the YPS and the WPS agenda. I was in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh and went to the refugee camp, sat with the young women and sat with the young boys. My heart is still bleeding. The young men and the young women wanted peace in the camp. When we talk about peace, they wanted peace in the camp so that they are not abducted, they are not recruited, they are not raped. They are actually protected within the context of where they live. But they also wanted nationality. They wanted to know that they belong, that they cannot live in a camp forever. They wanted to know that as Rohingyas, they are able to go back to Myanmar one day and that there will be peace in their country. So peace for young people, peace for women is not just the ideal of the bigger story, it is also the very personal. And when I sat with the extraordinary young leaders of Nepal, the extraordinary acting mayor of Kathmandu, a young woman, and sat with the Minister of Women Affairs of Nepal, a young woman from the Dalit community and the sub-tribe within the Dalit community. They were saying, look, we are young, but we are leaders. We are young, but we are women. So don't talk to us about just being young. I'm actually a mayor of the whole city. I'm actually a minister. We want to prevent conflict in our country. And to do so, we need development. We need Nepal to move beyond being an LDC country. They were clear that peace means development. Peace means social cohesion. But peace must recognize that young people are not waiting to lead tomorrow. So I wanted to share those examples in terms of what does leadership mean for young people and for women, and what does it mean for those who are displaced, and what did it mean for me? We are responding to the situation in the Middle East at the moment. The Straits of Hormuz, the closure of the Straits of Hormuz. I lead a conversation within UN Women and participate in the leadership in the UN. We continue to hear of the pressure on fuel prices, on food prices, that when the maritime industry is actually under pressure. What does it mean for peace for the young people? It means jobs. It means they are losing jobs. For the mothers, it means food security. So we must bring the YPS and the WPS agenda in a way that it articulates the practical issues that confront each age, each generation, each community, in a way that we find solutions together. So I end with the following recommendations. It is the YPS and the WPS agenda that connects for us the ethos within CEDAW, the convention to eliminate discrimination against women, into the peace and security agenda, and to bring the ethos of the Beijing Platform for Action into the WPS agenda in a way that recognizes that commitment that exists, that the girl child and young people are at the heart of the three frameworks, and that accountability is also of our member states. So thank you so much to Italy and to the Philippines for really this focal points meeting. And I want to really feel that we need to come out with our message today to feed into the Security Council. And what has come out, we know that we celebrated last week the countries that were elected as non-permanent members. What are we going to tell them about the WPS and the YPS agenda, so that among those 5, we also have champions for this agenda? We must, as we have learned as UN Women, including through our Women, Peace and Humanitarian Fund, I hear the panel, we must resource. We must resource the national action plans. We must resource the regional action plans. We must resource politically, like we are doing today. This is resourcing politically. We must resource diplomatically, opening the doors for the implementation to happen. We must resource technically, the training, the skills, the possibilities, and we must resource financially, making sure that there are resources on the table. And resourcing financially requires us to name the contradictions which are in front of us. The world is never safe, just as we know from World War I and World War II, and as we know today, the world is not safe if we just rely on military security. The YPS agenda and the WPS agenda is about human security. It's important for our nations to have security, but what is the nature and what is the quality of security of our nations? More drones, more missiles, more and more and more of the warships does not bring the security that the young people need. It is jobs, it is schools, it is food security, it is respect for good neighborliness, it is social cohesion that brings the ethos of what young people and women need. So let's name the quality and the character of peace that we are talking about. And equally, let's name the painful issue. The world might not have less money, actually. It's about the choices of where the money is going. Because we can redistribute the military expenditure and put it more to the YPS, what is coming out of the national action plans of the YPS agenda and the WPS agenda, just redistribute the military expenditure and include investments elsewhere. That is what this is about. And in conclusion, you talked about the mechanisms for follow-up, the formal mechanism. I'm looking at our hosts for this year. This could be a major outcome of your leadership, so that when we have the next year of the WPS focal points, we always carve out an extra 1 hour of this sharing. It can be formally institutionalized into the existing mechanisms. When we meet in October, as we observe Resolution 1325, we can always have a day in which we link YWPS agenda and the WPS agenda as a systematic convening, as UN Women, as the United Nations, UNICEF, the Peacebuilding Fund, UNFPA, we have really and are working together, because that's the ethos of UNAT. Coordination, collaborative work, coming together. And for us as UN Women, as the pen holder for WPS, really, we are also lifting significantly our coordination mandate, our collective effort for us to say peace is at the heart of our communities. And women and young people are at the heart of those communities. They want meaningful, safe, and full participation to be part of the solutions. I'm just grateful to have had the opportunity, together with Paivi and our UN Women colleagues in the room. They can wave, you can see them, for us really to be part of this great conversation. Last time I was in Italy was many years ago, when UN Women Italy, then colleague Simone Ovat, may her soul rest in peace, had invited me. So for me to have come here, received by Simone, and now to be received by our colleagues at UN Women in Italy, it is so meaningful in so many different ways. So I just want to say thank you so much. I wish us the best. It has been a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to the next 2 days. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this powerful speech. Last communication from my side, service communication. We still have 30 minutes to use this room, so we can use it to connect with each other. We have some refreshments still in the other room, and in 30 minutes we will have to leave from these spaces. So thank you very much to everyone.